Hey everybody, welcome to this Friday's edition of No Label Live. We have an exciting show today. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Nathan. I am the Muscle Motivator. I am a mindset and accountability coach. And I want to get straight into the conversation while it allows us. Click ad, boom. For this week's guest, he is about to join. He is one of the most creative people that I know, and he definitely fits the no label defines me.
All right.
Oh, there we go.
All right.
You guys don't know how exciting this is. It took a couple tries, but we got it to work.
We're together now. That's what counts.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can hear me.
So we're just gonna. Yeah,
Great.
I can hear you. Let me get on. See if I can hop on and share this a couple times. So if anybody's out there and they join us, go ahead and give us some likes, give us some wow faces so we know. There we go. Let me share. All right. So, No Label Live, episode number 4. This has been an interesting journey, my man. Just working with the technology alone, it definitely has been interesting trying to figure that out. So, for those of you who are joining us for the show, I titled this, But I'm Not Creative. Because how many people in life, that's what they say. But you're all about creativity. You draw, you do all this stuff. But that's not me, right? I'm not creative. I don't draw. I don't sing. I don't know. What else do people consider to be creative? I'm not an actor. But ever since I've been following you, Stefano, and been watching what you've been doing, you challenge that every day as a creative catalyst and as the founder of Jungle Time.
That's one.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got a lot going on. But you are like the perfect person to challenge that thought of, but I'm not creative. So why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how your journey started with challenging your own creativity?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's unbelievable how many times I hear the "I'm not creative" line, and it's unbelievable how many times people put that label on me. And you know what? My whole life I've had issues with labels, which is why I love that you have this "no label defines me" thing going, because I can relate to it so much. My whole life, people have tried to either pin labels on me, and you know what? I just have issues with people putting labels on me. I have issues with me putting labels on me. In fact, every time I come up with a label for myself, it doesn't take long before I feel uncomfortable having assigned that very label to myself. And you know what? When it comes to creativity, I've been thinking a lot about this. Like, what is the link between labels and creativity? And to me, labels, they limit creativity. And that's why I'm an advocate of burning those labels down, or at least focusing in on the right ones. I was one of these kids that, well, first of all, I'm an only child. So turning to creativity was a form of entertainment for me. I needed to occupy my mind. I didn't have a little brother or a little sister to play with. And so that's really where I found my outlet to kind of play with my imagination. And I've quite literally been very artistic and creative my whole life. But you know, that's, I think, the biggest misconception, or it's the biggest label that's added to the label of creative. is that creativity means being artistic. It means being able to draw. It means being able to act or play music. And the truth is, if you are a human being, you are by default already creative. And that is one of the things that I have been trying to teach people. Because, you know, when you look at the pyramid of human needs, creativity is at the top of that pyramid. And I think everybody deserves to have that opportunity, you know, to reach their full potential and to experience that creativity and to enhance their life and to enhance their work and to enhance their relationships. And so my background is in product design. And so my career started as, you know, finding ways to use my creativity so that I could solve real life problems. And, you know, being labeled creative is one of those things that, of all the labels, that's one of the labels that I have a little less issue with, because I truly love creativity. I'm an ambassador of it. And I mean, without it, I don't know who I am. So it's one label that they can put on me, and I'm not going to be so quick to take that one off. But the truth is that creativity has even worked against me at times in my career. Because, of course, even as a product designer, people often give you credit for the creative problem solving that you do. But at the end of the day, I often didn't feel like I was being taken seriously. I was the artsy kind of, you're the creative guy. But you know what? You don't get to sit at the adults table. You know, these are executive meetings. And you know what? And, you know, I couldn't understand it because my mind, I've trained my mind to think in a very strategic, you know, problem-solving, business marketing kind of way. And yet I was still just being seen as the artist. And you know what? I couldn't deal with it. It was really getting under my skin. And, you know, I was also applying and focusing on all these labels in life that people kind of want to put on you to define you as successful. You know, so, you know, I was doing creative work. I was managing and leading a design team. You know, that's a great thing. You know, I had the salary, I was getting promotions, things were going well. And creativity has always kind of filled a void for me. Whenever I felt that, you know, my life wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be, creativity always kind of picked me up and rescued me. And now I was in a corporate setting where for the very first time in my life, the more I created to get my fix, because that's how I used to kind of feel good about myself, the emptier I felt. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Lewis Howes and his story. Whereas, you know, like you try to accomplish all these things and you're always feeling this big emptiness. And so I started to realize that I was chasing after the wrong labels. And I wanted these labels on me to kind of represent me, but at the end of the day, it didn't align with my core values and beliefs. And that's when everything changed for me. That's when my whole life changed.
So let's ask the audience, especially since I know Heather jumped on. So has there ever been a time in your life where you've created your own label and it has placed a limitation on you just by having the label that you think is necessarily the right label, but in your example, the creativity kind of put a cap on what others thought you were able to do?
Yeah, well, you know what it is? The more you try to like kind of be really, really creative and like think outside of the box, sometimes people see that as you wanting this kind of creative control and complete freedom, and you just want to do your own thing and you don't want to be bothered by anybody. You just want to, and it's so far from the truth. Creatives actually need a lot of structure. They prefer it. They actually don't want a blank canvas. So I think I've somehow put this label when I was especially when I was working in the corporate world. I think people just assumed that that's what I wanted the entire time. They didn't really understand that I also believed in, you know, setting objectives and, you know, aligning with a company's mission. Like, what are we really trying to do? And so I think people just thought, you know, oh, look, as long as you're creative and you're doing your thing and we're giving you enough freedom, you'll be happy. And in the end, I feel like I was always fighting that. People always thought that's all I wanted to do. If you just let them create, he'll be happy. If you don't try to restrict him, he'll be happy. And I don't know if I put that label on myself, but of course there's a part of me that wants to be that artist. I always tell people, break the rules like an artist. So in a sense, I guess the more I put on that artist label, the more people perceive me as an artist. And, you know, and then when you're working on your own, a lot of times people assume that because you've got that artist label, that as long as you're creating, you're happy. And that means that business is, you know, really not that important. Like, oh, you wanted to get paid for that? Oh, because don't you love what you're doing? Do we really need to pay you? And so that can be a little bit like, you know, when you're especially passionate about something, people can get the wrong idea. Like, I'm willing to do this at any cost and no matter what. And the truth is, you got to kind of stand your ground at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And that goes across all areas of being an entrepreneur. Everybody thinks, oh, you're doing what you love, so you'll do it for free.
Yeah, yeah.
Or,
well,
where's my discount?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And you know what? To add to that, I just thought of something else. And you probably know this because you've seen my stuff. I definitely put on an optimist label onto myself. I am an optimist. I'm an eternal optimist. I always will be. And don't try to change me because that's just the way I seem to see life. But the problem with that label is that people assume that when I'm kind of preaching about optimism and I'm trying to get people to, like, you know, I'm trying to catalyze people and get them really excited, people seem to think that what I'm saying is that things are easy. Kind of, oh, you make it sound so easy. And I think that's something that kind of works against me because I actually never said that it's easy. I never said that following your dreams, chasing after goals, and also just being creative. The creative process is a very difficult process. Nothing in life. And so that's something that works against me sometimes because people just assume that everything is just magic in my world. But I see reality. I see the challenges.
Well, and that goes back to the old saying, if it was easy, everybody'd be doing it.
That's right. That's right. But everybody should try.
Yeah. If you have a dream, absolutely chase after that thing because there's nothing that's worse than getting to the end of it and saying, well, I wish.
Right. You know what? There's a book by Todd Henry who writes a lot about creativity, and his book is called Die Empty. The idea is that when you are on your deathbed, whenever that is, far, far away from now, you want to be on that deathbed and you do not want to have all these kind of ideas that you wish you had executed or tried out trapped inside you. You want them out. You quite literally want to die empty, free of all those things that you wish, all your bucket list things, you know, should have been attempted at least.
Yeah. I can tell you just in the beginning of my journey here, that's kind of the approach that I've taken. It's okay, let's see what happens. It's what I want to do, and I would much rather have tried it and learned from it than to just stick in my spot, just keep living the identity or the label that my everyday life had created.
Absolutely.
And let's take that jump off the cliff and get our wings on the way down.
Yep. I just read this quote that said there are winners and losers, and then there's the others. And the others actually represent a majority of the population, right? I rather quite literally be a loser, that's a label right there, than to never have tried, you know, or hopefully to be a winner. And then it comes down to the label of success and failure even. Like, what do those even mean, right? When a scientist is trying to find the cure for something and they fail, and of course they fail over and over again, they label that as research and not failure, and they move on, and it feeds their work. And that, to me, that's the right kind of label to be putting on stuff rather than, you know, the whole failure thing.
Yeah. And most of the time, if they're working on medicine, right, it might not cure what their initial goal was, but it works for something.
Right.
Most times.
And so that's the creative process right there. Like, you know, it's also like when you start writing a book. You start writing a book about one thing, by the end of the book, you realize that you actually wrote a book about something else, but that's fine, right? That's the way, that's the path that your journey took, you know, and that's it. You know, you move on, and maybe, who knows, it could spawn into other projects. So, you know, I actually, it's funny because, you know, you said that you don't consider yourself creative, and that's normal. And I get what you mean. And I know you're playing with that because you are creative. But what I love about you is that, I mean, I see what you do, and I'm in awe of what you do. And you actually, to me, are a representation of the creative process. And I say this because the creative process always requires a struggle. And when I see you sweating there and trying to do these things that I wish I could do, I know that that's easy. You make it look easy sometimes, but I know it's not easy. And to me, that's why you represent creativity, because that struggle, it's not just kind of like, oh, deal with it if it happens. It's quite literally an ingredient in the process. And so I love that about what you're trying to do. I love that you're trying to say, you know, let's let go of these labels, because to me, that's an important part. You know, these limiting beliefs have to be let go if you even want to consider unleashing a little bit of that creativity.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And one of the things that I enjoy is watching your process as well. Like there was something you did a while ago where it was a picture of a lion, and just watching it go from a sketch to the finished product was amazing. And one of my other things is the book that I have coming out soon is all about awakening the beast within. So I want to know where your the jungle tie. So you have lots of animals in your art with that. So what do the animals represent for you?
Yeah.
And the tie. The tie is very crucial to you. I know that because you have ties and everything. So what does the tie represent?
It's actually great that you asked, because it has everything to do with labels. Jungle tie is everything to do with labels. So when I was in the corporate world, you know, there were moments where I was very unhappy. And I was unhappy because of my personal situation, because I didn't feel like that I was growing. But I was also unhappy with some of the people that I encountered in the corporate world. And what I started to realize is that we tend to sometimes behave a lot like animals in the corporate world. And it's no surprise that they call it the corporate jungle. And I found this kind of was a bit of an outlet for me to kind of almost poke fun at the way people behave. But our culture loves to, you know, add human attributes to animals. So what Jungle Tie actually was, it started off as an art collection, where what I did is I analyzed human behavior in corporate world settings. And so what I did is I actually attributed animal behavior to human beings. And believe it or not, I came out with this little collection really just to entertain myself and to almost deal with the stressful days, you know. So when I had one of these encounters with these jungle tie animals, I would basically kind of have some fun with it and kind of create and represent this individual. And every single animal represents someone that I've met, or someone that someone has told me that was who they met in their jungle, right? Wherever corporate world that was. And so I created this collection, and I really just kept it for myself until one day a friend of mine said, look, I'm having an art gallery, a pop-up art gallery, and do you have stuff you would like to supply for this? You know, I'd love to have some of your stuff up. And I was like, sorry, I don't really have much of a collection. And then I was like, or do I? And so I actually put this art collection up. And you know what? I never imagined it would get the kind of reaction that it did, but people really, really connected with it. They kind of recognized the people that I was depicting, these animal forms. They were like, I know that guy, or I know her, you know. And, you know, I kind of sold out my stuff at this pop-up gallery, and a lot of startups and a few like establishments around the city here in Montreal purchased it, put it up. And so I realized that I was about to kind of can that project. It's something that I created for myself, but really each one of them is actually a label. So I don't know if you've seen them all or remember them all, but some are like the walrus, right? The walrus is that kind of unapproachable individual, you know, that boss that basically you really, you know, you can't really talk to, that you don't really feel comfortable having a conversation with. And each one of them represents a certain label of a type of person. Of course, it's generalizing. Most people don't realize it's them, by the way. They kind of say, oh, that was cool. And I'm thinking like, wow, if they only knew that's actually them, you know?
Well, and so that leads me to another train of thought about labels. Like each person, we can individually view a label very different.
Right.
So let's say it's a tiger, right? And let's just say, I don't know what it may represent, but let's say somebody thinks, oh, that's an angry person that's always on the attack.
Right.
Well, I could look at that and I can say, oh, well, to me, that's represents power. That's a powerful person on the hunt.
That's right.
So it's the world of labels is very interesting.
It is.
A lot about perspective.
And then there's a lot of our culture that comes and says that a tiger or a lion represent power and strength. But surprisingly, some of the animals that I created, they don't always represent what, let's say, pop culture or what, fairy tales or movies have depicted those animals as. And usually there's some foundation or basis of how I came up with that animal. And the truth is, I kid that these are all about, well, I actually don't kid that they're about other people. They actually are. But I myself am a lot of those animals. And so those labels were actually not created to hurt anybody. That's why I don't actually say who they are. But what they were created as was as symbols or, let's say, thought-provoking pieces that are supposed to cause reflection. You're supposed to have a bit of a look at yourself in the mirror and say, really, am I that? Or which one am I? Or why is it that individual acts this way? And I think it's really meant for growth and to build leadership and kind of an understanding of who we are, rather than to like make fun of people. Though a lot of people like the making fun of part.
Yeah. And I think we could have a little bit of each one of those things in us, and it is about that question. Okay, who am I today?
That's right. Like on a Monday,
because every day we show up differently.
That's true.
We don't show up the same all the
right.
time.
For most of my life, some people always ask me, so which one were you? Like, which animal was I? And for most of my working life, I was actually a chameleon, and I call it the conforming chameleon, because I actually always just adapted to environments. I never truly evaluated an environment and said, is this environment right for me? I always tried to integrate myself and kind of just adapt to the people, to the culture. And that's a horrible thing, I think, to do to yourself. That's when you have to realize that you need to be you. And the day that I really realized that I needed to be me is the day that I shed my chameleon skin, and that I quite literally grew myself a new set of wings. And so did my creativity, for that matter. And I've been free ever since. That was in 2014. So this is my fourth year of, feeling as free as a bird and just being me, chasing opportunities, getting to work with the kind of people that I want to work with. And it's fantastic. It's a fantastic feeling. I wish it upon everybody who wants that.
So if you were talking to someone who's got that feeling of being the chameleon, and they're just camouflaged to fit in and to survive where they are right now, but they are looking to be that free, since you use wings, that butterfly, or they are looking to be that eagle, what advice would you give somebody who's sitting there like, that's what I'm looking for, but I don't know even a first step to take?
Right. Well, the first step to take is, and I'm going to sound like I'm preaching other people's things, because a lot of other great people have said this kind of stuff. But the first thing you have to ask yourself is really, what is your why? And it's actually why I call myself now not a designer, not an illustrator, not a creative strategist, but I call myself a creative catalyst, because that's actually my why. Because the what is the designer, the what is the illustrator, but the creative catalyst, my mission is to spark creativity in other people, and that is what I'm trying to do. So I think the first thing you need to do is, especially if you, I mean, there's some people that, you know, they don't get their purpose from work, and that's fine. You know, they might get their purpose through other things, and that's fine. But at some point, if you can't answer that, the first thing as a chameleon you need to do is figure out where do you feel you need to belong? You know, what would make you happy? It's actually Heather Parody that mentioned this to me. She often comes up with these great questions, and then like you have to kind of answer them, and you're like, wow. She basically says, you know, if I were to run into you in 5 years from now in an airport, assuming we haven't seen each other for some reason, and you, hey, great to see you. How have you been? How are things going? And my life has played out exactly as I wanted it to. What's my answer? And you know what? As you know, I know it sounds maybe a little bit cliche, but you know what? Ask people what their purpose is, and you're going to get some real long, confused, blank stares. People really know. And so the first thing you need to do is say, like, you know, if you're working for a company and you're not sure about what you want to do work-wise, what's your company's purpose? If you can't answer that, you've got a problem, because you're in an environment and you're not sure why you're there. Then you have to ask what your purpose is, and then you have to kind of say, okay, what steps do I need to take to be where I want to be? Almost a bit of reverse engineering. I don't really ever suggest that someone, you know, just abandon their job or make a rash decision like on the spot. I just don't want to do that. For some people, that actually works too, though. You know, I kind of walked away from where I was. I kind of planned it, and it was kind of partially intentional and then partially a surprise. But honestly, it was one of the best things that's happened to my career, was actually walking away from what I had been and saying, I may not know what I'm going to be, but I'm willing to find out. Like, you know, so I always think it's interesting. You mentioned eagle, or I always picture myself as a phoenix, and I quite literally set my situation ablaze, everything burned to the ground. And then I like to think, or I like to envision myself having risen from the ashes. And I think everybody who's in that kind of situation should do that. Now, of course, burning everything down doesn't mean burning all of your bridges, you know, telling your boss to go you know where and saying, I'm out of here. I think you need to be kind of civil and also just think things through. But I think it sometimes takes a long time to even realize that you're in a comfort zone. So that's one. Yeah. Comfort zones to me are the most dangerous thing you can possibly be in. And every time you get out of one, eventually you end up in another one. So.
Yeah. So what I like to think of the comfort zone is when life gives you the friend zone.
Right.
So we want to avoid the friend zone at all costs.
Yeah.
And we want to chase the girl of our dreams or the guy of our dreams or whatever. Right? That's our dream, is to go after what we want, to challenge ourselves on the labels that we choose for ourselves, and challenge other people on the perspective they have on the labels that they place on you. And the great thing about the labels, though, if we're sitting there and we have, hello, my name is, we write it down, they easily peel off.
That's right.
And you get to create a new one, like your Phoenix that you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I'm sitting here, I've listened to our conversation, and I'm still thinking, am I really creative? I still don't know.
Yeah.
Is there some sort of challenge that you could give us to start to realize that we are creative?
Yes. You know, first off, the first step really to doing it is, of course, removing the label that you think you're not, and kind of like, you know, and I mean, of course, I teach creatives in a college, and I do a whole bunch of different things. So I have seen people who also thought they were not creative, and you know, that development, that journey is a beautiful thing, and they get there. So the first thing I would say is kind of like, trust me on this, like, you know, you can do this. So that's step number one. Step number two is, I think people, it's another label, right? When they think of like creating something, like, let's say I said, hey, why don't you try painting? Just try painting anything. The first thing they think of is like, you know, Picasso, Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci. those are all these labels, and that's a label of perfection that we think that to be an artist, you have to be pumping out that kind of quality. And you know what? You go into a classroom with, kindergartens, and you ask them to draw or create, and they're excited, and no hesitation. And then as we go through life, something starts telling us, well, yeah, you're not supposed to do that, or you can't do that, or that label doesn't apply to you anymore. And so step number one, this is the challenge that I would say to people. I want you to create something for somebody this week. And by create, people always think I mean artwork or draw, but you know what? How about just writing someone a handwritten letter about how you feel about them or how they've inspired you and mailing it? There's a whole lot of creativity that goes in that. And what's cool about writing an actual letter is that it's almost something that's so vintage, it's kind of new again. Like if you receive them, could you imagine that reaction of receiving, and that person knows that you actually wrote this by hand? I think that's creative right there. Or if you have certain skills and you think you can help someone in your entourage or someone that you see with a problem that they're having, even solving that problem for them is a form of creativity. Or I don't know, there's so many things that you can do, but you have to start somewhere. And I think that the first part to start, like a good starting point, is to stop being worried about the end result. People know, let's say you can't draw, and people know, people aren't expecting you to be some great artist. So why are you thinking that they'll be disappointed? But imagine you doodled something that maybe meant something to you, like a quote, and you just drew something to the best of your ability, and you sent that to them. I mean, they would still feel touched by that. And sometimes people say like, well, okay, I get the creative problem solving, but I'll never be able to draw like you. And I always think it's funny how people dismiss that I've done this probably for easily well over 10,000 hours. So it's like you're completely dismissing that fact that, trust me, if you had done this as long, then you would probably be just as good, if not better. And that's also a fact, because I've seen people who cannot draw, and by the end of 3 or 4 years, they're like, it's incredible. So I would challenge everybody to create something for somebody and to do something that actually kind of touches somebody. Not just create something for yourself and you hang it up, but really do something that is going to kind of help somebody or just make them feel good. Just put a smile on their face. And if it means be resourceful. You don't have to go out to the art store and buy stuff. You don't have to start, spending money. Look at the resources that you have in your house, and you can probably come up with something really funny. I mean, if all you have is wine corks because you had a party, then you use those wine corks and think of something. I mean, it really doesn't take much. And I actually want to get it started. And what I mean by that is I've actually created something a little while back. And I actually don't know if you know this, but I have a hard time parting with some of my artwork. I do occasionally sell it, but because I know what I was thinking in the moment when I created, usually I have a hard time disconnecting. But I was going through my sketchbooks, and there was this one piece that I said, you know what? I love this piece, and it has helped me, and sometimes I kind of turn to it for motivation. But I thought to myself, I want to give this to someone that I feel has been able to do this, and that person is you tonight. And so I wanted to give you actually my Phoenix here. And this is actually a few pages of my sketchbook. I went out and framed it, but you can actually see the different levels of sketchbook because the corners of the pages are actually burnt. Yeah. And so basically what it says here is, number 1, burst into flames, 2, rise from the ashes. And no matter how many times you number 1, you can always number 2. And you know what? I love what you're doing. You've inspired me. When I think of you, I see that machine, that muscle motivator. I see you as a phoenix. And so I would love to send this to you. I'm going to have it sent to you, shipped to you. And I would like that maybe at some point in your life when you feel that you've had the motivation that you need from this, or maybe you've enjoyed it for a while, but you see someone in your life that you feel needs it, then I would say pay it forward and give it to them. And that's the kind of thing I wish people would do, even with this challenge, like do something that kind of transmits to somebody else, that pay it forward thing I think can go a long way. And so I'm going to have this sent to you ASAP. And because I believe in everything that you're doing, it's really something that I want to see you keep doing. And if ever you have that moment where you feel that there's this label creeping in that's telling you to stop it, then I want you to call me so that I can rip that label right off of you.
Absolutely. I can commit to that. So if you're watching this live or you watch it on the replay, go ahead and comment yes if you are down to participate in this challenge. And I think offline what we'll do is we'll come up with some hashtag that everybody can post under that hashtag and talk about their experience of whatever they create for the person that they share.
That's a great idea.
So before we end, where can people connect with you?
All right, so this is the thing, and you know this already. I am on probably every social media platform known to mankind. I'm on LinkedIn. You can look up my name. I'm on Facebook. I have a public page and a private page. Reach out on either one of those. It's Stefano, my name. It's obviously in the live video. Stefano Di Lollo. You could find me online at stefanodilollo.com or creativeu.com or jungletide.co. I'm there. You can find me on LinkedIn. I mean, it's endless on how many. Probably I'm on Twitter. I'm on Snapchat. I'm all over the place. So clearly, the label of I've gone over the stigma of self-promotion. So I'm on all. But you know what? Connect. Anyone who wants to connect, feel free. Don't hesitate. If you think of writing me and then you think, oh, I'll do it in a week from now, I say do it right away. Reach out, say hi. I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can.
And then the final question.
Yes, sir.
How do you define no label defines me?
No label defines me. You know what? To me, a label is just a limiting belief. It's a label is meant to be ripped off. The only person who gets to put labels on yourself is the ones that you wrote out. And even you may decide to rip those off of yourself at some point and replace them. And if ever you think that you've got a label that's been pinned on you by somebody else that doesn't belong there, by all means, rip it off. It's just, life is too short to have other people define you. So define yourself. Let them know who you are. You place those labels on you first, and maybe they'll get the hint when they read those labels. But don't allow them to be the ones to put that label onto you.
Beautiful.
Mic drop.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for being on this week's show.
My pleasure.
I appreciate all that you do.
Thank you so much.
And go ahead and drop in what you liked most about the show this week. And also, did your perspective of being creative change?
Yeah.
So we will catch you guys next week on a new episode. And until then, let no label define you.
That's awesome. Take care. Thank you.